Welcome. It's the Digital Roundtable, Wednesday, June 23rd. Another glorious day in paradise. It is a little warm in Texas, 93 degrees, but it is a lovely day. And I just got done doing some little polo, which I'm not really good at, but you can always dress up nice and look like you are, in the midst of some magic or something. But it's really a tough game to play. Anyway, we are, in the beginning of summer. The longest day was 2 days ago, and we have a great guest today about the topic of Internet of Things. And let's go for some musical opening. Dr. John Butler.
Yes, the flag in Baton Rouge, looking for the train, feeling about as faded as my jeans. Bobby thought the diesel died right before it rained. Took us all the way to New Orleans.
Excellent. Excellent. How are you doing today, Johnny?
I'm doing just fine. I'm looking at the economy come back. I'm watching my University of Texas playing the College World Series. My alma mater, undergraduate alma mater, LSU, got knocked out by Tennessee, and Texas knocked Tennessee in the head yesterday, so I'm happy. But it's a great day. It's a little warm in Austin, Texas, but we expect it to be warm. As a matter of fact, it's a little cool in Austin, Texas. So I'm doing fine.
Yeah, we're having a little feedback on your mic. Maybe get a little closer. I don't know what's going on there. Llewelyn, how are you, sir?
I'm quite fabulous, thank you very much. And if you ask, the weather here is perfect. I'm in Rhode Island, and the weather is just absolutely divine.
Excellent, excellent. And our guest today is Lee Howes. Lee, how are you, sir?
Doing great. And it's a pleasure to be with you all today at the Digital Roundtable.
Excellent, excellent. Well, we're glad to have you. And for those who are tuning in, Lee Howes is the founder and CEO of IoT83. Lee has a history of recognizing technology and market trends and using those skills to define and deliver disruptive and game-changing products and technologies that show fast returns for customers. He, brings to his current role a significant expertise, and he has gathered by working at very, very large companies as a general manager or vice president, executive companies like GE and IBM and 3Com and multiple Silicon Valley companies. And he has also a good education. He's a Blue Devil, has an MBA and a master's in electrical engineering. So welcome, Lee.
Thank you very much.
Good, great to have you. We, as usual, get to review every week what's going on in the marketplace and the economy. And I know that some folks may still be thinking that there may be some lockdowns in the future. Tell you that I've been out and about now for about 2 or 3 weeks, and at least in Texas, it seems like we're coming back to normal. Everybody that I know is vaccinated. So I know that not everybody has, but it's really good to see businesses opening up and things sort of coming back mentally, and everybody getting ready for the summer. And so interesting that the economy seems to be sort of trading sideways. The only alarm bell on the economy is that the price of oil, the barrel of oil, is now at $73.28. I think that it's the beginning of potential inflation. I hope not. The price of a gallon of gas in Greater Austin is around $2.56, which is barely 6 cents down from last week. That's a good indicator. And so, Johnny, what's your take on COVID and the recovery and the economy? Where are we at?
I think we are progressing at not rapid speed, but certainly progressing. And of course, it is always the people equation that becomes very, very interesting in these times. That is, if you look at what's happening in Austin, if you look at people coming back to work, especially in the gig economy, there's restaurants. If you look at the supply chain, for example, I want to fly to New Orleans, and during the pandemic, they sold Hertz and et cetera, sold all the cars off. So it's coming back slowly. And as you know, I was on the committee for the CNBC 2021 50 Disruptive to find those companies. I've been watching those. A lot of those companies are $1 billion companies now, and they're coming out of the pandemic, and they go everywhere from the internet to the Internet of Things, such as Robinhood and Discord. They have not gone public yet, and these are, I think we have some unicorns on there. So I am watching those for a number of things. Number one, the impact on the Internet of Things as 5G comes. I want to see how companies like Stripe and Robinhood and Centennial One, which has to do with solar winds, will do. So it's a mixture of the old economy coming back and the disruptive list that I did. And I think you did watch the program with the CNBC.
Yeah.
It's a lot of interesting
absolutely
coming on that. Yes.
Yeah, there's actually a company there that is very interesting to me. It's called Relativity.
Yes.
And the guy who's the founder was the chief propulsion officer at Blue Origin. And he claims that he has come up with a method of building a payload rocket in 1/3 of the time that Blue Origin and SpaceX are doing. So quite interesting innovation going on. Let me go to Llewelyn. How are you, sir?
Well, for a general summation, it's the best of times and the worst of times, which is not an uncommon situation. I think we're all waiting to see how egregious the drought in the West is, how that impacts the national economy. It is also a source of inflation because we'll be paying more for fruits and vegetables across the country. There'll be cattle will be slaughtered prematurely, so meat will go up in price after that culling of the herds because there's no water and no feed. And this may go on for a very long time. We're basically in the 20th year of drought, or the 21st year actually, of drought, and there's no magic expectation that it will end bang and next year will be different. This year has been particularly egregious because of very low snowpack and very low going in with very low water reserves in the dams, so there'll be electric shortages, very substantial electric shortages on some days with nothing to ameliorate it, and we're going to see wildfires. That is a lot of bad news hanging out there, which is going to affect the national mood and the national economy. It also is going to accelerate the movement of some people from California to who knows where. Johnny thinks it's Texas. I'm less convinced myself. Probably when they get there, they may revise their plans. I don't know. But it's a mix. We have not conquered the virus. We've got it at bay, but folly in not getting vaccinations is leading to the threat of mutations, which will affect all of us if the virus mutates sufficiently that is out of the scope of the vaccines which we have. And we've got shortages, which are also contributing to inflation, some of which were introduced because of trade policies of the last administration. And finally, we have gridlock in Washington, the much anticipated bills that this administration was hoping would be the cornerstone of their legislative year have not come out of Congress. So it's not a pretty picture all over, although there is huge energy and enthusiasm in business circles, and some sectors of the economy are really in boom. So it's a very up and down picture.
Yeah. Lee, how do you see all this? Give us your sense from your bird's eye view about the pandemic and the journey of the pandemic, and perhaps any lessons learned from it, And then how is the economy, and in particular, your business, how are things looking up?
Yeah. So, first back to Llewellyn's point, I'm out here in California, so all of this drought is certainly top of mind, and it's extremely dry here, and a lot of risk of fire and all of that. But with regards to COVID, it really is a pleasure to be able to, I'm vaccinated, my friends are vaccinated. It's certainly a pleasure to be able to get out and about again. Some semblance of real life. And that's the way I'm starting to sense the businesses and partners that we're working with. At the beginning of the pandemic, even though everybody was very engaged in terms of new projects, they were reluctant to start because of the economic uncertainties. But there's a lot of enthusiasm now. The sort of what I see as pent up demand to get on with business. And our topic today, Internet of Things, a lot of really strong interest in starting new projects. With regards to, going through this sort of year of, I'll say economic drought, if you will. It was sort of, everything was just sort of flat. New project starts was slow. But during that period, in particular, what IoT83 did, and really I think a lot of other businesses with similar situations, we doubled down. We leveraged that time. Certainly we had our corner customers to take care of, but we leveraged that time to invest in more technology. And based on what we're doing and what I've seen from other companies, I think we're really gonna see things take off because of all of the new technology, capability, and pent-up demand that we're seeing from customers and partners. So there's a lot of reason for continued caution, but I think that there's really going to be a technology boom over the next few years.
Yeah. So as we discussed,
sorry, I don't doubt this technology boom, but I would like to ask you, Lee, what is it that you offer? Because I'm ignorant. What does IoT83 do? What does it offer its customers?
Absolutely. So let me just tell you a little bit about the genesis of IoT83. I've been involved in I'll say industrial networking technologies for a long time. And so originally that was SCADA. So, taking care of all sorts of, different assets, and that sort of gave way to IoT. Why? The availability of super low cost sensors, low cost edge computing, the availability of low cost cloud computing, and then the extremely rich set of open source software that was extremely powerful and more or less ubiquitous communication. So all of that sets the stage for IoT. I was involved with IoT at GE, and I was working across GE businesses with a lot of different vertical market customers to deploy IoT solutions. And what I was seeing there is we were always going back to code. It was too expensive, slow, and risky to deploy sophisticated IoT solutions. And so that was really the genesis of IoT83. What we set out to do at IoT83 is to build a hardened, secure, elastic core, a big data processing engine that could be used, and used again. And then on top of that, build a set of application development studios that made it really easy for people to build scalable and secure applications without going back to code. At the time we were doing this, IBM was promoting something that they were calling Blue Mix, and that was sort of a template for us. Blue Mix was a set of carefully curated open source modules that were crafted together into an overall IoT system. So we took a page out of that playbook and executed it. We were lucky enough in the first really 2 years of the existence of the business to deploy a system with a major North American carrier to deploy in some 5 million homes and connecting some 50 million devices, which was just wonderfully fortunate for us. And so that allowed us to really build and prove out this flexible core. So over the past couple of years, we've been building the application development studios on top of that, really to democratize IoT. So no longer is it necessary to spend millions of dollars in a year and a half to build powerful IoT systems. Now you can spend thousands of dollars in a couple of months and have something material for your business. So that's what IoT83 is all about.
Let me ask a question here about, let's call it back to the future. When I came out of Northwestern University, I had a dumb terminal that I worked with called ACT5A. And what I would do is I would hook up to the computer at the University of Texas, which is now, we call it the mainframe. We now call it the cloud. And then all of the applications, all of the statistical application, of course, was on the mainframe. That is, my computer could do nothing but interact. What I see now is people going to a cloud, and I've spoken to companies because of security that would say, we don't want any more smart computers in the office. We want everything to be on the cloud, so we're back to dumb computers. And if you think about that, in theory, it allows the hackers not to hack the company since it goes to the cloud, which makes the cloud responsible. So can you imagine with me all of the data of major firms, all of the data of universities being on what we call the cloud, which I call the mainframe? What does that mean for security? Is it not back to the future where I have gone from my dumb computer to my smart computer with all of the software? Now, all of a sudden, everything is back on the mainframe, excuse me, the cloud.
That's a great concept. And we see this all the time, the pendulum swinging back and forth, depending on the different technology innovations, that are at play. There's a lot of very good reasons to go from the, from the business environment to the cloud. I give you a couple of them, and then we'll get to the security piece as well. Over the past, well, let's say 10 years, there've been initially we would say, this business uses maybe 10 software as a service solutions. But I read an article recently that says even small businesses are using 50 software as a service solutions, maybe 100, right? So you've got all of these different software as a service solutions that really don't talk to each other. So, what you want is all of these different services to be able to interwork so that your data all means something, right? So you can use all these different services. So getting all of these things into the cloud where the data is in a central place, it enables a new level of, I'll say, catalyst for business innovation. So that's a big plus. Mm-hmm. Another plus is one of the things you're talking about. Can I hack the business or can I hack the cloud? All of the bad news is all of the data is in the cloud. So if I get in, I've got a treasure trove as a hacker. But because the attack surface is more contained, it's harder to do. So all of the security and authentication and encryption associated with getting into the cloud, multiple firewalls, it's much more secure, if you will. Right. It's a bigger prize if you get in, but it's much harder to get in. Yeah. So I like it from that perspective as well. But the pendulum swings both ways. IoT is probably best implemented, I'll say, initially in the cloud, because you've got a very rich environment for innovation and creation of new services, leverage all of these pieces like what we've built with IoT83 in order to build applications quickly. But you then have to push back to the edge for leveraging things like 5G with low latency, right? Right. Because you've got a lot of things that are really best done at the source, right? Where you've got smart devices that are saying, I'm only going to send data if there's really a reason to send data. So I conserve communications, I conserve energy. I'm able to respond in a really low latency way to events. So I think that concentration in the cloud makes a lot of sense. but this sort of breathing of technology between the cloud and the edge, is a real important concept. But yeah, starting my career, I actually built some of those dumb terminals. So I resonate with what you're talking about.
So Lee, how do you rationalize the notion of the cloud and the edge, in the fact that we are going from a few billion things connected in the world, roughly 10 billion today, to, according to, depending on who you believe, any of the analysts, 100 to 300 billion things. And you can see what's happening every week. We're tracking the improvements in telecom and 5G. So over the last 2 weeks, Amazon has announced quietly a new service for Internet of Things called Sidewalk. Qualcomm just announced a slew of new chips designed just for IoT. Dish is starting their own 5G network focused on IoT. Verizon is making all kinds of strides on telematics and IoT with 5G network. AT&T is building all kinds of infrastructure everywhere. Cisco is unveiling new routers and gateways for industrial IoT. Intel came up with this thing called the Industrial Processing Unit. It seems like the edge and IoT and a sensor everywhere is going to become a reality inside the car, inside all these devices. How do you scale that, Lee? Scaling is one of the biggest challenges. How do you go? Can IoT83 manage 10 billion things, 100 billion things? How does that work?
Yeah, well, that's a really good point. So the key to all, first of all, in my view, it's a really big plus that all of this new technology is coming out for the edge itself, because we had really low cost sensors, we had low cost communications, but it was still tough to put together a solution that worked. It was too costly for businesses to figure out, how am I know what I want to measure. How do I easily put the appropriate sensor on that thing that I want to measure? How do I easily gather all of that data? And then how do I easily push it all to the cloud? Conceptually, it was all there, but the kit was too disparate. It was just too difficult. Right. But now with all of this sort of consolidation, if you will, of the edge, it's getting a lot easier. Now, you're pointing zillions of data points or data telemetry increments to the cloud. What do you do with it? Well, that's where all of this, from IoT83's perspective, we're standing on the shoulders of all of these years and years of investment in really great big data processing technology. So Hadoop and Apache Spark and Kafka and all of these really excellent technologies. What we've done is we've curated a platform that allows us to process this data at speed as it's coming in, with sort of arbitrarily scalable volume. And really that's all about the economics. Are these data streams valuable enough to actually process? And now this is where the smart edge comes back in, because you initially, what people will do is, okay, I don't have the smart edge intelligence yet, I'm going to point everything at the cloud. And so it better have some pretty good economics associated with it, because you're going to process it, right? Well, now, what you have to do then is you have to process it intelligently, because now you've got a glut of information coming in from all of these devices. You can't expect humans to actually look at it. Right? So now you have to say, okay, I only want to see this when it crosses this threshold, or even that's not good enough. I'll be having too many false positives. I want to have state. So I have to define state and say, when this is true, this is true, this is true, these things are not true, only then do I care when these conditions occur. only then do I create an alarm or alert. Only then do I invoke somebody to look at a screen or take some sort of an action. So, it's not enough to just process the data itself, but it's to post-process the information, because, I've seen too many IoT installations, especially early on, when, they said, oh, this is going to be great for my operational efficiency. And now they've got all of this data, and their personnel are just absorbed trying to look at all that data without doing all of the processing. So, it's an evolution, right? The first thing is to get the data connected and say, okay, what of this data truly is important? What really drives my KPIs? And only look at that first, right? And say, okay, now how do I filter, from the pure economics perspective, because it costs money to process this data. And so now you're bringing it in. How do I take away the distractions? How do I filter this out so that it's actually creating value? And so to do this iteratively and incrementally, learn from that, and then you say, okay, now let me reduce the amount of data that I'm actually pushing in by pushing some intelligence back to the edge, pushing some of these state machines and filters back to the edge, so that you're only looking at things or only using the energy and cost of transmission to bring the things in that matter.
Yeah, Lee, what you're saying
you synchronize the cloud and the edge so that they both understand the different parts of this equation.
And what would you say? The old professor here said you would need a theory. So I do big data, right? I do big data and just take the analog of the universe. There are so many rocks flying around out there, which I have absolutely no interest in, by the way. But I'm very interested in what humans do. I'm very interested in creating theories about human beings, then maybe could apply to marketing. I'm one who thinks that we could do a census every week if we wanted to. So I think what you're saying is what we see in academia. There's lots of data out there, but what's your theory? You say, what's your intelligence? So I think as we move toward, you have taken open innovation, you have integrated the open innovation and produced data that people must be intelligent about their theory. So now, especially business schools, we need theories of what people do. In marketing, we need theories of what people do, so we can literally test the theories with all of the data. So I think it's a big leap, because I do big data myself, and this is what it has done for me. What happens to the normal curve? I'm accustomed to taking samples and then estimating parameters. But what happens, like in my last article, I could have 10 million people in the analysis if I wanted to. So we're going to have to say it's a normal curve out, much like finance does. Do I have to take a sample to estimate the parameters? So what you call intelligence, we call good old theory about what's going on in all of this data. So this is good stuff.
Llewelyn?
I'd like to understand, somewhat moving on from Johnny's question, how would we see the effect of IoT in daily life? What will it do to the way people live, say, 10 years from today, if we continue on the trajectory we're on now?
So that's a really tough and somewhat fraught question, with a lot of different implications. So what, from our perspective, what we're trying to do is we're trying to drive efficiency and improved operational results in business. And so what my objective for IoT83 would be is that we're trying to, through this efficiency gains, what I would like to see with this technology revolution is significantly improved GDP, right? So this is all about building a better future. Now, the fraught piece of this is how do we deal with that better future? One of the cool things about these application enablement platforms, and then another sort of layer of depth on that is the concept of low code and no code application creation. One of the things that this does is in some ways it fills the skills gap that a lot of businesses are seeing to enable them to deliver the kind of products and services that they want. Mm-hmm. So there's not a lot of people who've got the experience and wherewithal to build all of these big data processing engines, but it's also impractical for every business to own these skills. You have to pay for these skills, you have to pay for the maintenance of the product that you create, on and on and on. An application enablement platform and in general, low code and no code development platforms, I feel create a platform for dramatically increased productivity. And I'm talking about a step function. I'm not talking about a small increment. I'm talking about 10 times improvement in terms of being able to build new applications. So from my perspective, this renaissance of technology, this is kind of like, we were talking about the mainframe to non-mainframe back and forth pendulum. This is a step function like moving from writing in assembly language to writing in C or C++. I was a chip developer for IBM way back when, and I would design these things using gates. Then I learned how to use VHDL and synthesize them. It was easily 10 times faster. I went through the assembly line development to C. This is like that. This is a major jump forward. How does it affect every man? My hope is this sort of democratization of IoT continues to snowball so that these extremely useful technologies actually become just a part of daily life. I mean, you won't be building applications per se, but you'll be leveraging the pieces that these technologies enable.
So Lee, real quick, Johnny. So Lee, one of the things that is fascinating in the journey of this automation is that the first waves are about bringing the networking and the sensors and the control software as an add-on to things. Over time, those add-on capabilities find their way inside the infrastructure that you were enhancing, right? And so, for example, we see it now with the automobile, the Teslas and all of the above, right? They look more and more like a computer, right? So what can you share about your current customers and where they're taking this? What can you share about where is it going? Where are we at in that journey of embedding things and ultimately beat me up, Scotty?
Beat me up indeed. So we're, I feel like, the capabilities always lead the reality significantly, right? Mm-hmm. So, that's one of the reasons I was so excited about what you're talking about earlier of all the advances at the edge, mm-hmm. right? Because the value, the economic value of IoT is proven. But initially, it was only for the folks who had the millions of dollars to invest. They could afford to take the risks, and they fought their way through the thicket and got to the other side. Right. Now, with technology, IoT as a service made it all a lot easier, but it was still expensive, right? So these platforms like application enablement platforms using low-code technology, this makes it much more streamlined. But even with that, initially what we're seeing is sort of this first wave: connect, monitor, manage, optimize, right? So there's not a bunch of AI and ML involved. It's sort of rule-based. What do I know about my business? What are my KPIs? What is my theory? About what should I be doing to help improve my business? Interestingly, with IoT, we see across different vertical markets the same design patterns. What you're really trying to do, sort of the killer apps of IoT for operations, is fault detection, prevention and avoidance, preventive maintenance, and service optimization. Those are sort of the killer apps. Now, your theory will be different depending on your vertical market, but what we call that context. So, what is the context for IoT value creation in Industry 4.0? Well, it's these same killer apps, but it has a different context. It's about making sure that my process runs smoothly, my logistics are all in order, et cetera. in smart cities. What is it about? It's about traffic flow. It's about energy conservation, but it's still these same design patterns. So those are the things we're seeing in sort of this first wave. It's really sort of rule-based, but the technologies to leverage all of the the AI and ML are there. And not only that, but they're advancing. We've recently integrated into our platform a technology called AutoML, which allows you, with somebody without a computer science PhD, to actually feed telemetric data into these systems, and it just tells you, this is the correlation between these things when they're in state 1. They have no correlation in state 2. And so now you can start to use these things and feed them back. What we do with our customers is we show them these are the things that are possible, but we also steer them to don't take too big a jump until you get concrete results, right? Let's deploy this system, get real concrete results for your key performance indices, and then take the next step, and then take the next step. That's sort of the way we see it evolving.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry. So Lee, I would, if I
hold on, Johnny, let Llewelyn go.
Okay.
No, it's all right. I'm still trying to get the picture of how small companies can avail themselves of massive data. I'm quite impressed by how much computer skill there is in small companies. They have websites, they operate, but there's a limit. They simply don't have the brain power. They don't have the resources to hire the people who can do complex things. How do they avail themselves of big data? How do they find out what big data has to tell them?
Well, let me give you an example of a small business. I was actually at the, what does AHR stand for? The Air Conditioning, Heating, and Refrigeration Conference in Orlando, right before the pandemic, right? And I met a guy in line who worked for Train, and I won't tell you who he is or what his new company is, but he decided that he wanted to set up a new business to help medium-sized companies optimize their heating and air conditioning businesses. And so what he's doing is he's going around and deploying on rooftops all of these sensors to gather data about how these air conditioning units are working. This is him and another couple of guys and some some of the repair and maintenance folks that he's connected with. So he's pulling all of this data in, and he's feeding it into IoT83, and we used our no-code capabilities to immediately create a connect, monitor, manage solution for him. And now he said, okay, now I want to do more. I want to start to leverage this telemetric data and understand what are the trends between these things. I want to start to use the AI and ML workflows to be able to create higher levels of optimization and energy use for these customers. It's a really interesting market. It's if you look at what is, I forget the stats. I used to know. It's like 56% of all energy created is used in building management. Maybe it's more than that. I'm not sure.
40%.
Okay. All right. Well, it's a lot, right? Yeah. And then you've got energy management solutions for these big buildings, but practically nothing for the small ones. So that's what he's jumped into. And just with a handful of employees, now he's availing himself of this sort of key information associated with these air conditioning units in a strip mall, right? So he's signing up everybody in the strip mall to optimize.
It's almost that is when I hold on real quick. When I hear you say that explanation, it makes me think about an automobile where you have an engine, and now in order to make that engine run better, you need a better carburetor, a better intake, right? And some of these companies are building that on top of this IoT engine platform that you have, right? And they're dealing with the real world, and they're taking what you've created into a specific solution, right? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And in these small businesses, they don't even know. Any business operator, they know what it is they're really trying to do. I'm trying to sell, custom something to my customers. They don't know about air conditioning units. They don't know about economizers. And the guy who's trying to sell the economizer solution doesn't know about IoT. So you've got to create this infrastructure, right, of where it's easy for people to avail themselves of the parts that they don't know or understand. And only then would this business say, well, look, if you were to, for example, if you were to install this economizer for, $4,200, you're going to save $20,000 over 10 years.
Great.
I have a follow-on of sorts here, and I wonder whether there is any point you see where we'll see a natural disaggregation of very big computer companies. I'm thinking, for example, of Lyft and Uber. They've driven out of business an enormous number of small taxi companies, but there's no mechanism, because nobody has the kind of computing power that they do, in which a localized ride-sharing company can actually start up and operate. Do you see a time when there'll be some disaggregation, not by government fiat, but by the market itself disaggregating?
Well, again, that's hard to know. But one of the things that we see that is sort of an enabling trend, a lot of our customers with this IoT, they want a wire gap. They don't necessarily want, especially a lot of industrial operations, they don't want their data necessarily in the cloud. They may want this IoT capability to be running on premise. And so because we built with open source technologies, we can actually do that. We can take this same thing that we're running normally in AWS or Azure and run it either in a private cloud, managed by their IT organization, or even in an appliance. Now, this is big data. It's not a gateway device, but one of the things I was saying earlier is we've built our business on the shoulders of all of this great open source big data processing capabilities. So it's there, right? There are many other companies like us that are leveraging these open source technologies. So the opportunity to disaggregate this is certainly there. It's really, it will be driven by economics. Is it actually, people don't realize it, but it is actually cheaper to own your own servers. And you pay for them only in a couple of years. And you can use technology like ours to pull all sorts of different, applications together. You own your own servers, you've paid for them with a couple of years, and so now you're just paying the energy bill. So the economic motivation is there. There are technical hurdles, of course, to cross, right? To make sure that your disaggregated compute is secure, is always on, is reliable. Solutions from VMware are available to make that happen. But it's just is it economically important enough to climb the hill? If it is, it's there. It's available to you.
Johnny?
Yeah, I think it's very important. Everything from insurance companies is all about data, right? It's all about, let's call it underwriting for insurance companies. And when you sit in a board meeting, you always ask questions. And the more answers you can get from data, the better off you are when you make a decision. It doesn't mean that the decision will be absolutely correct, but it means then that the data are really, really data-based and the decisions are data-based. Now, what I find interesting also, and I want to ask you, Lee, if I have a program, I don't know, SAS that I use, or SPSS that I use, I should be able to log into your system and run from my smart computer the data analysis that I want to run. That is, if the application of SAS is on your program, and I'm sure it is, and remember, all of this is just good old statistics. It's not data science, it's not analytics, it's good old statistics with theory. So my question is, with the open source, can I take my SAS program and hook up to your data and download different kind of variables? Because every time a door opens, that's a data set for me. Every time an automobile passes through a red light, that's a data set for me. Every time you use a credit card, that's a data set for me. So how can I interact with the programs that I use, whether let's just say SAS, which is a statistical program? Can I hook into your open source and download the data that I need and run the analysis, or are you going to provide the SAS on your platform?
That's a great question, and it leads me into another topic that I wanted to raise. with these application enablement platforms, we were sort of in a existential moment some years ago where we said, are we really even an IoT company anymore? Or are we, IoT83, is it really flows 83? Because at some point, we don't care whether it's a sensor or a gateway or a database or a third-party application. And so these application enablement platforms, first of all, it's a whole collection of open source tools that are curated, into a solution. I just had to make that distinction. But at some point it becomes a business integration platform. So you've got this one SaaS application, and it wants to access data in a peculiar and particular way. So the AEP can say, okay, I'm going to build a connector to be able to connect to that type of data. So when that data comes in, it's in this format, it gets reformatted so that it is in some coherent way, some coherent format that the rest of the system can understand. I have another application from another third party. Connect to that as well, connect to this. And so now you've got a sort of a data lake of commonly formatted information in pretty much whatever database you want that you can do operations and analytics on. And you could feed, it can either just be sort of a one-trick pony where you say, okay, I want to be able to leverage the data processing capabilities of this AEP, this application enablement platform, pull the data, do the processing, send it back out. Or it could be used to sort of unify your OT, IT, and BT systems into one coherent system that sort of allows everything to talk to everyone and all aspects of your business to get the benefit of all of this data insight.
Absolutely, because we call that Markov chains in the statistics and select if. But I would, we need to talk offline about some of the things we're doing in big data in the academy, because I'm doing something very, very similar for the academic side. So we'll talk offline. So I think the big key now, remember, is theory, and you can send me a tuition check. It's theory and not intelligence. I know you didn't go to University of Texas at Austin, but you just right. So as I tell Llewelyn, in Texas, what starts here changes the world. So I just changed your world from intelligence to theory. So just send me a check for the tuition, please. But it is very, very fabulous.
What I'll try to do is I'll try to offset it with that other conversation.
Yeah, offset it with the other conversation. There you go. Okay, good.
So let me take a second here to share about our sponsors. So I'm going to share my screen real quick for everybody. So I just put on the chat the URL for digital360summit.net. And that is our annual conference coming up August 31st to September 2nd at the Embassy Suites Conference Center Spa and Hotel in San Marcos. We're expecting 100 speakers, 400 companies, 2 awards, 1 showcase, over 1,000 attendees. There will be 20 keynotes, 14 panels, followed by 14 white papers and 20 videos. And our topics are network, sensors, data, software, utility, cities, mobility, buildings and infrastructure, energy and utilities, water and wastewater, smart factories, and software for verticals. And, we are delighted that last year we had all these companies participate. Maybe IoT83 join us this year. And we want to say thank you to TXST for sponsoring our Digital Roundtable. So Lee, what kind of verticals are you working on? Or, you're a platform, and obviously you sell to anybody, but where is the big action happening? Is it financial? Is it fintech? Is it oil and gas? Is it transportation? Where are the bulk of your customers?
So you're right. We are horizontal, but there's sort of some areas of I'll say centrality to our customer base. a lot of us that founded IoT83 grew up in telecommunications before we were in industrial. So we've got a lot of contacts in the telecom world, and we've done some pretty big deployments in telecommunications. But even those are very IoT oriented. For example, we did a really big deployment to, as all of this, we're all, for example, of our home offices with all of our multiple Wi-Fi devices, Wi-Fi management became very complicated for service providers. So we did a big IoT deployment to help them manage the various problems and issues in Wi-Fi, large Wi-Fi deployments. We've got quite a good bit going on in Industrial 4.0. Again, a lot of sensor aggregation, a lot of automation projects, and a lot of focus on really optimizing business operations in Industry 4.0. Fleet and asset are sort of interwoven. So are you doing fleet management? Are you doing logistics management? Are you trying to optimize the workflows around receivables and deployments in your warehouse? These things are very common, and so we've got a lot of customers in fleet tracking and asset tracking and asset management. But then we're also doing quite a lot in what I would call industrial IoT, sort of mission critical systems. We've got some in petrochemical processing where as the chemicals will go from one process to the other. They have to be carefully managed from a pressure perspective and from a temperature perspective. And so this stuff is all mission critical. We've got a lot of deployments in that. Very little consumer. We're really not focused on any consumer stuff. We're not very involved in fintech or big pharma at this point. But these design patterns, as I said, repeat from industry to industry. So, that's certainly a possibility.
Yeah, it seems to me that over time it's possible, and I'm making this up, obviously, my crystal ball, that your platform, IoT83, running on Azure or AWS or some, compute, generic compute, could actually become bigger than AWS itself or Azure itself if the entire world was coming through you. So are we predicting that IoT on steroids from 10 billion things to 300 billion things, that we are talking to the next IPO unicorn to be? What do you think?
Well, Andres, that's certainly what we hope to be true. We believe that coming out of this this whole COVID thing, we managed to keep the wheels on the wagon and kept all of our employees focused on enhancing the product. And I think we've got a really powerful product now, and we're getting a lot of traction in the market. This no code, low code workflow processing, it really is, whether it's IoT83 or somebody who's doing something similar, this is the wave of the future, because the sort of 10x, and a real step function in productivity difference that these technologies drive, it's just irrefutable. And we think we've got the best mousetrap. So yes, Andres, I hope that
do you find yourself in your conversations with your customers as they're trying to figure out how to create their solutions, that a lot of the conversation ends up being around new business models? And the reason I ask that is because John is our business model godfather, and he talks all the time about why these business models are actually the reason that anything is happening.
For us, we're really seeing both. So there's almost immediate and material impact from just a business optimization, right? So I can see my machines, I can monitor them, I can manage them, and I can optimize my process. But for companies, that's sort of for an operator. But for an OEM, it's like, oh wait, here's an opportunity to layer IoT onto my entire product line. And so the possibilities there are huge. For example, you layer IoT onto something that is going into retail. Well, now you're selling a completely new service to the person who's operating that retail chain. Where is my customer concentration? How can my floor space be used better? It's all sorts of insights are now possible. So it's both, right? It's business optimization as well as new business models and new services.
Johnny?
And also, you can get direct feedback from the original equipment managers on how people are reacting to their product. So when Britt Hurt, for example, did the company here in Austin, where you don't have to wait to get the feedback on whether or not the product is good. But right now, the way you have it set up, the original equipment manager company can have direct feedback on how customers react to it, where it sits in the store, and those kind of things.
Exactly. Yeah.
It seems to me as a layman in this subject that one of the great futures for IoT is in medicine and pharmacology, which you said you were not involved in. But the options in medicine are huge, or just in pharmaceuticals, sorting through all the compounds we have and applying them to various patients and various. That is a big data challenge. And it's medicine if we can bring big data to bear.
Yeah, I completely agree. Even though we've tried to build this platform to be as uniformly applicable across the different vertical markets, we have not yet got involved with the folks with the right domain expertise to get ourselves involved in those problems. I think that the platform and the capabilities of it certainly apply, but there's still that theory that John was talking about, or to use my words, context, right? What is that domain expertise to go ahead and map this?
I agree. And I also think that on the sensor side, we're still probably one or two cycles of evolution. I'm talking about 5 years, maybe 7. Where, and we're doing a lot of this at Texas State with the Connected Infrastructure Research group that I manage, where we're doing ingestible sensors and printable sensors. And these sensors need to be super inexpensive, like 5 cents, 10 cents, 20 cents. So I think that's part of the enablement that needs to happen, right? The sensory equipment needs to, talk what you talk in networking, but they need to be very cheap, disposable, throw away.
Well, I failed to mention agriculture earlier. We've got quite a few things going on in smart ag, and the kind of sensors that we're beginning to see in soil analysis is moving towards the kind of thing that you're talking about, Andres, where the sensors are becoming more sophisticated to be able to detect the kpH levels and stuff like that, and are inexpensive enough to deploy and use. And we haven't even touched on all of the multiple wireless technologies and how that's going to evolve in the future of IoT. But that's certainly a rich topic as well.
So let's finish on that topic. As you know, we track smart energy and smart utilities in the cities. And give me your perspective of the benefit or to the whole ecosystem of something like 5G. What is 5G going to do for this proliferation? And there are many other technologies and networking protocols and standards, but 5G in particular, what is it going to do? It's sort of like COVID. It's going to train everybody that this is possible finally, or?
So ubiquity of communication is number one, right? And so we still have gaps, even with all the proliferation of LTE. We still have gaps. We'll still have gaps with 5G, but the more ubiquitous we can get communications, the more of the gate opener it is for IoT. But the really key thing that is immediately important for 5G, where it is initially deployed in metropolitan areas and areas of population concentration, is low latency, right? So before, with LTE, you really couldn't do process management, right? You had to have, smart edge. You had to have decisions made poke-yoke, right? They had to be at the site of instance. But with 5G, this really low latency capability is going to open the door to a lot of new possibilities in terms of leveraging the cloud and cloud to edge distributed intelligence.
Yeah, yeah. Gentlemen, any final questions?
Yeah, I'm really excited about the agriculture. I think that we will be plowing fields and land stuff around the globe with no people. You know, that was my father had degrees in agriculture, so I have an interest in agriculture. But can you imagine that we need to grow some corn somewhere and no people are around? It's all done by big tractors. It's all done by 5G. It's all done by robotics, and you have all the sensors to determine the soil, the alkali of the soil, and etc., and watch the world change again.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I grew up in Tennessee, so agriculture is a big part of my history as well.
I hope you to go to UT.
No, I heard you dissing UT earlier, so I'm staying out of that part.
I too have an.
I mean Tennessee, not the UT, the University.
I do have an interest in agriculture, and I worked with a couple of agricultural publications at different times. But in agriculture, we'll see this interesting aggregation, disaggregation phenomenon, where suddenly people want the small vineyard, the small bee farm, the localized, the personal touch, and the almost the turning away from industrial agriculture, which is of course favored by IoT. It's interesting how this happens. There's a sort of sense of back to the future, finding pleasures, the human pleasures in some of the more traditional ways of doing things. But I do think the most, from my point of view, the most exciting thing about IoT is how it will come to bear in medicine, how we will match sickness with various proven develop new drugs. It could do a tremendous amount for humanity, wipe out whole areas of traditional medicine, like traditional infection for things like malaria, bilharzia.
Yeah.
The disease.
I completely agree.
Yeah. Lee, unfortunately, you know, all good things must come to an end, and our time is somewhat up. And we have had a good audience today, and I am really excited about what you're sharing with us. And I wish you all the success in the world to stay in touch. Maybe you'll take me up on participating in Digital 360 Summit 2021. I hope that you're a unicorn soon. And thank you for being with us today. Much appreciated.
Well, it was really a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Great.
We will get in touch. I have your email address. I guess Andre, send me his email address, please.
Yep.
Good. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
You betcha.
This was awesome, Lee. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks so much, Llewelyn. It's really been a real pleasure to talk with you both. It's all three.
Johnny, take us away.
Okay. Sometimes when the night calls it a day and I wake up down in this missing you kind of way, I remember things better left forgotten.
Thank you. Thank
Bravo.
you.
Bravo.
Excellent.
Bravo.
Excellent. Thank you.